Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to Being Conscious. In our series where we are decoding this divine subject, today we will talk about the second planet in the Surides, that is, planet Moon. Now, when you talk about planet Moon, this is a planet which is governing human emotions. Any emotion you feel, any emotion you go through in a certain period of time is largely governed by this planet. Now, this planet is probably the most dangerous planet out there. Normally, in astrology circles, you would have heard that the malefics, the Saturn, Rahu, Ketu, these are the planets which are malefic. But the most malefic planet is the planet Moon. The reason being that emotions, the way we process reality, emotions, if you decode or deconstruct this word emotion, emotion really means energy in motion. So, whatever you accumulate in your life, whatever thought processes, the way you process reality, that is basically stored in your system. So when you store your system, when that energy is stored in your system, that basically becomes an emotion. And this is what Moon governs. Moon governs the emotional dimension of a human being. So how do you know if your moon is good or not, even without looking the chart? Ask yourself how emotionally intelligent you are. What is the level of your EQ? The better your EQ, the better your moon is. It's interesting to note that when you are in a regulated state of emotional well-being, your moon is in top-notch condition. But if your moon is not in such a great condition, that means that there is some amount of emotional regulation which is needed. The reason I'm giving a lot of importance to the malefic nature of this particular planet is because the human mind is always subjected to fluctuations. Talking about the human mind, talking about the way we process reality, human mind is always like a wild monkey. It is always chasing between different stuff, distracted. And if you talk about the dimensions of what are we chasing, if you closely observe your emotional thought process, it is only coming from two emotions. One is the emotion of fear, another is whatever you desire. So there are only largely two emotions which our thoughts are constantly hovering around. Either the things which you fear, those are the thoughts which are running in your mind, are the thoughts which are something related to a desire. Ask yourself, is there any other thought which is in your mind? So moon is basically representing our mind, our thought process. There's another planet which represents intellect, but we will come to that in the later states of our video. But if I talk about the focused aspect of moon, moon is the water element in the human body. And if you closely observe, 70% of human body is constituted of water. And there's a famous saying which says that yat pinde tat brahmande, whatever is within your body is also within the universe. So which essentially means 70% of your body is water. So water element is absolutely critical for your emotional well-being. The reason I'm saying this is, if you are someone who is facing some skin issues or something related, some really destructive health disorders, most likely reason is that the water element in your body is imbalanced. And because of which, a lot of skin issues are prominent. When your water element is imbalanced, not only your hormonal system, not only your skin takes a hit, but your overall mental well-being is tremendously afflicted. There has been a scientific study which says that a lot of chaos happens around the new moon and around the full moon days. Reason being that the way the moon is oriented, it not only affects the tides in the ocean, but it also affects the bodily fluids in the human body. Because when you are basically working, when a human body is 70% water, and because of the gravitational pull of the moon, that human body is also constantly subjected to that fluctuations. So it's very important to keep the moon in check. Now I have a good news and a bad news for you. The bad news is moon is mostly a very challenging planet to handle. And the good news is that 90 to 95% in this planet have an afflicted moon. Now, the reason I'm saying this is a good news is because we have a competitive advantage in trying to heal this moon. We can constantly work on our water element. When you are constantly healing your emotional body, you are becoming a healer by yourself. People who are into the healing profession are people who practice Reiki. They know the importance of cleansing the water element. Because when you constantly cleanse the water element, you become a healer, which everybody reciprocates, who everybody is captivated by. The ambience, the aura which you project has a healing quality. If you look at saints, if you look at people who are saintly in nature, the very presence uplifts you. The reason being that they are connected to the source, the ultimate truth, and they constantly heal their emotional body through practices of meditation and chanting. And once you do that, your emotional body is cleansed. And once your emotional body is cleansed, you become a source of healing for everyone around you, everyone in your ambience, and the world at large. So it's very important to cleanse the emotional body. Now, how does the emotional body get disturbed? Now, if you talk about the mechanics of the human mind, I will also bring in the dimension of psychology here, because psychology goes hand in hand with astrology. And psychology is very important when we explore planets, because when we talk about the planetary elements, they don't directly impact us, they impact our thought process, the way we behave, the way we perceive reality. And because of the perception, because of that aspect of life, the way we work, the way we function changes. Now, let's talk about different dimensions. Let's talk about how this is afflicted, how the moon or the emotional body gets damaged. Now, if you think about the human mind, right, either it is living in the past or it's living in the future. If you closely observe your thought processes, you are either living in the past, you are constantly thinking about the same things which happened. If you are, and talking about the future, that gives rise to anxiety. Now, something really happened in the past which had a lot of traumatizing experience in your body, right? If you think about some event, and let's be honest, each one of us has gone through a traumatic past. But now, if you hold on to that past, if you hold on to that particular negative emotion, you are ruining your present reality. Because every time you are in that toxic signature, the toxic emotional signature, you are not only radiating negativity in your environment, but you also become a source of emotional pollution. My words are very deep, but they come with a lot of conviction and thought process. Imagine a time that when you are working on a certain thing, but within yourself you hold a lot of grudge, a resentment. Do you think the quality of that work would be any good? Probably not. The quality of work will only improve when the energy you put into that work, the energy behind that work is cleaned up. When the energy behind that work is cleaned up, the quality of your work enhances. Now, this is why it is very important and crucial to heal your past traumatic events. Because let's remember, we all come with an expiry date. Nothing is permanent in this world. Let's understand the impermanence of reality. Let's acknowledge the fact that nothing in this world is permanent. The opinions people hold of you also changes with time. So don't take anything personally, because one day you and me both are going to cease to exist, but the world will continue to move on. So it's very important to move on. There is no point in harboring grudges, resentments, holding revenges. It is very important to move on in life with a light heart. The lighter you are in life, the higher you can fly. Remember what I just said. The lighter you are, the higher you can fly. Now, there are certain combinations, right? It's called Moon Ketu combination and Moon Rahu combination. The Ketu represents, Ketu, a south node, is basically something which represents our past. When the moon and your past is connected, you are not going to get happiness in the material world. If you are someone who is searching for happiness in the material world, you are bound to suffer. Because the nature, the very act of your life is aligned towards spirituality, is aligned towards focusing on the esoteric, the non-material. Similarly, if you have a Moon Rahu conjunction, in that particular case, your mind will always be hovering around material aspects. You will always be scared of stuff. Because remember, anything you fear in life, it is basically the root of that fear is desire. Because if you are scared of something, the reason you're scared of something is because you are fearing losing something which you desire, which you hold close to your heart. And when you let go of that very desire, fear dissolves. When you don't have the desire of something, you become invincible, because there is no fear which exists within your system. So it's very important to constantly work on your moon. Because when you work on your emotional body, if you work on your structural heritage, if you work on your emotional body, 70% of your life is sorted. Reason 70% of your life is sorted is because your whole body consists of 70% water. And when the 70% is sorted, life becomes a joyful celebration, because you are light, completely free from the burden of the past. And you look forward to the future with a fresh landscape, with a fresh set of eyes. This is the reason why emotional cleansing, emotional clearing of the mind is of utmost importance. And what are the ways by which we can clean our emotional body? Exercise is one powerful way to clean your emotional body. The reason I'm saying you do this is, when you exercise, when you really work out, you are sweating. And when that sweat is coming out of your body, a lot of trauma is stored in our body, in different portions of our body, in terms of water, right? So I said that 70% of our body is water, and water holds memory. And when we exercise really hard, all that emotional garbage, all that emotional baggage is released in the exercise. And all those toxins are flushed off. Another way to clean your emotional body is to pranayama, to breathing exercises. Because when you breathe, when you are constantly breathing deeply, more effectively, all the toxins from the system are released outside. The emotional body is something we constantly need to cleanse. Otherwise, we would be subjected to psychosomatic illnesses. Constantly working on the emotional body, constantly rendering attention to your emotions is of utmost importance if you want to keep your moon in the top-notch condition. The reason is evident as we have spoken. Nobody wants to live a dull life. Nobody wants to live a depressed life. We all want to live a happy, exuberant, a life filled with ecstasy. And to achieve each one of these, we constantly need to work on our emotional body. An emotional body cannot be taken for granted, because if you take your emotional body for granted, you are bound to suffer, and nobody wants to suffer. Remember the famous quote which says, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So if you want to suffer the pain or you want to transmute the pain to resilience, is a choice you and me can take. Thank you so much for your time on my video. We will talk about the planet Mars in the next video of the series. If you really loved my channel, do subscribe to my channel. Also share your candid comments. Also share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. Bye bye.